Hello everybody, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Now you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
So please mute your microphone so that we can avoid noise. So let's start our class today. We are discussing a hypothesis testing procedure. And this is the testing, possibly the concept of exit poll. So it is actually one task so far the election analysis is concerned, where a cephalogist, he does exactly the hypothesis testing to predict the possibility of a winning party. So this is an example. So today we shall discuss about these steps that usually a cephalogist follows. So essentially he should have an idea about what is the distribution of his population. As I said, in majority of the real life situation, the population follows normal distribution. And if a population follows a normal distribution, then a sample also should follow the normal distribution. So the sampling distribution is also a normal distribution. Now, what a cephalogist does is, so he collects samples from different constituency or assemblies and then get the data. So he acquired the data by means of collecting samples. And here, okay, size of the sample may be 300, 200, or maybe whatever the cephalogist can think suitable. So it is the sample data. So now, once the sample data is collected, so he follows 5 steps. So first step is to decide the two hypotheses, null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Definitely, a lot of practice is required for a given hypothesis testing, how to choose the two hypotheses. So in this class, we shall discuss several case studies to understand this concept better. And it needs a little bit practice, that's all. Okay, practice, little bit maturity or experience, then only you will be prompt to decide the hypothesis. Once the hypotheses are decided, next task is to decide the significance level of the testing. So it is usually denoted as alpha. So a general practice to decide the significance level of testing is 5%. So here the idea is that 5% is the probability that in your testing you can make an error. That is the significance level of hypothesis testing. And regarding this significant level, I shall discuss in details many other things involved here. Anyway, so the first step is deciding the null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis, and consider a significance level of hypothesis which is usually expressed in the form of percentage. 1%, 2%, 5%, it is like this. Next, you have to decide which should be the sampling distribution that you want to use in your testing. You know, we have learned many sampling distribution, Z distribution, T distribution, chi-square distribution. Also, we have learned F distribution. There are 4 distribution techniques I have covered in this class. So, which distribution you should follow? This is because sampling distribution essentially gives this kind of shape. And one particular sample should be located in a particular point, which is shown here, like for 3 samples, it is shown here in 3 different colors. So your sampling distributions highly influence your testing procedure that you have to choose is appropriately. That is why you have to decide an appropriate sampling distribution for your hypothesis testing. That is the second step. And then third step, you have collected the data, that is the sample data. From the sample data, calculate the sample statistics. Maybe it's a sample mean, sample variance, and all those things. So this is the third step. And then fourth step, making a decision whether based on your sample statistics and the sampling distribution that you have considered and with given significance level of hypothesis, whether you will accept H0 or fail to accept H0. That means reject or fail to reject H0, whatever it is there. So this is the decision making. And then finally, results reporting. That means you should report the result in a very common language. Step 1 to 4, they are mathematical formulation, but step 5 is a non-formal expression so that any decision maker who does not know anything about the data analysis can understand the result. So it is the 5 step. The 5 steps involved. Final step is very trivial step. It is very simple. Now we shall discuss one by one each step involved, and then we will explain, we will illustrate with case studies. Now here again, few things that should be noted here. We have to choose between two hypotheses because I said that the two hypotheses are exclusive in nature. That means we have to choose any one. If we accept H0, then eventually it said that H1 is rejected and vice versa. The standard procedure is that initially, without any testing, you should assume that H0 is true. So this is actually the standard procedure so far. Hypothesis testing is concerned. So basic assumption is that H0 is taken as this. Actually, it is okay. As I said, I gave an example so far the courtroom scene is concerned. It is a similar thing is that we presume innocent until the accused person is proven guilty. That is the concept actually there. So H0, the null hypothesis, is considered initially as true. And then our test, our analysis is to confirm it, whether H0 is true or reject it. So it is the procedure that, okay, we should have sufficient reason to declare H0 as false. Now here, what is the sufficient evidence that I will let you know. Actually, that will be decided by your sampling distribution and then the test data that you have collected from the sample. Now here, one important point is that, this is very important, that we reject H0 only when the chance is small that H0 is true. Otherwise, H0 will be considered as true. So there should be sufficient reason. Right? Sufficient reason to declare that H0 is false. That is what I said actually. And this procedure, okay, the hypothesis testing procedure is based on the concept of probability theory. And probability means chance. This means that there is a chance that we can make errors. And then definitely whenever we report the result should be with what is the error probability. Now, whenever we say about the error, then we can say that why error should come into the picture. The error should come into the picture because of many reasons. This is because, see, if you select a sample, your sample may be, okay, small size, or maybe your sample collection is an erroneous procedure. So these are the two important sources which actually makes the prediction as erroneous. Now, let's see one by one the different steps involved. First of all, regarding the hypothesis, we have understanding, and we will learn many things whenever we will discuss with case studies. And the next is Okay, so we have already learned about how to define the two hypotheses, null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. And we shall discuss how to decide the two hypotheses given a problem. But before that, we should learn about the concept of significance level. I was telling that significance level is also sometimes it is called the confidence level. That means in order to predict a hypothesis or declare a hypothesis, whether it is true or false, how much you are confident. Now, confidence comes into the picture because if you are more confident, that means you say that I have less error. And if you are less confident means you can say that in your prediction there is a possibility of error. So if you predict a hypothesis at random, so you can understand the confidence level or significance level is around 50%. That means 50% chance that you will make an error and 50% chance that your right prediction is correct. So it is like this. So random guessing or random prediction is with 50% confidence level. Now let's come in details about what is the confidence level or significance level it is there. Now this level of significance coming into the picture of making an error. So in hypothesis testing, there are two types of errors involved. They are called type 1 error and type 2 error. So a type 1 error occurs when we reject H0, obviously incorrectly reject H0, but actually H0 is true. So this is the type 1 error. And type 2 errors, when we fail to reject H0, right? That means we accept H0, but H0 is not true. So this better can be explained using a table. And this table actually in statistical learning book called confusion matrix. Now this confusion matrix, as you see, there are two rows. One is that H0 is declared as accepted, another is H0 is declared as rejected. The two columns are there. One column H0 is true and another column H0 is false. Now suppose H0 is true and you declare that H0 is true. So here is a right decision. Similarly, H0 is false and you declare that H0 is false, then your decision is also correct. So this is the two things are the correct, what is called the records. That means how much you can write in your learning or in your prediction, how much decisions are correct. So these two columns are basically total altogether gives you the accurate, what is called the prediction. On the other hand, these two entries here, one H0 is true, but you reject it. This leads to a type 1 error. And here H0 is accepted, but actually H0 is not true. So this leads to a type 2 error. So these two entries in this right are corresponding to the error entries. Okay. So, and altogether, this is the correct entries plus error entries is actually the total number of decisions that you have made. And then percentage accuracy or percentage error that you can calculate by total number of correct decision divided by total number of decisions or total number of erroneous decision by total number of decision. It is the actually percentage of accuracy or percentage of error you can say. Anyway, so these are the two type of errors occurs there. Type 1 error and type 2 error. Now here, as I said, this is the percentage calculation I told you, right? So percentage calculation means the value should lie between 0 and 1, right? Inclusive. And this is okay. So 100% mean it is exactly 1 and then 0% mean it is 0. So this also alternatively can be expressed in the form of a probability. So here alpha, say alpha denotes the probability of making a type 1 error. That means how much you can make an error. Type 1 error is actually the thing is that A0 is true, but you made it false. So alpha, and this can be expressed in terms of your probability notation P. Rejecting H0, what is the probability that you will reject H0? But H0 is true. So this will, okay, if we can express this probability using your concept of probability or theory of probability, you will be able to get the values of alpha, and these values of alpha lying between 0 to 1, both inclusive. Similarly, type 2 error calculation also same way. It is a P accepting H0, but H0 is false. So these are the two, alpha and beta are the probability values. Alpha denotes the what is the probability of making type 1 error, and beta denotes what is the probability of making type 2 error. Now the natural question that arises is that whether these values of alpha and beta are related to each other, or one is dependent on other, or vice versa, all these things. I should say yes, alpha and beta are dependent on each other. They are not independent actually. The dependency in the sense that if one increases, then other decreases, and vice versa. So usually, obviously, so far our application is concerned, the alpha value should be as low as possible. Beta value should be as low as possible. But type 1 error is most significant so far reporting the result is concerned. I'll tell you why it is so significant. And another point that you should note, and we can prove it with some examples and then calculation also, that if the size of the sample increases, then the probability of making both the error in fact decreases. This is obvious because lesser sample size means more what is called the probability of making errors. So it is, the thing is that you can test it, you can prove it, we can explain it with many data collection activities, and then we can check it. So this is actually the sampling error, right? So sampling error usually increases when the sample size is small, and sampling error can be reduced when the sample size is large. You can note down the standard error that we can express sigma by root over n, and if n has the large value means error is less. It is like that concept, okay? And error is less means both alpha and beta will be less. Now here in general we'll focus on type 1 error, but type 2 error is also important. Now here again I should explain why I said so, why the type 1 error is important compared to type 2 error. The concept it is like this. Again I can draw the courtroom scenario as an example. Say suppose one accused, right? He should not be penalized until he is proven that, okay, he made the crime. That is why, right? So the thing is that even the judges also say that the innocent should not be penalized under any situation. So if a particular criminal can get excused, but under any situation, no innocent will be penalized without any his fault. It is like this. So type 1 error is actually you are innocent, but we are declaring that you made crime. So it is the error. So we'll try to reduce this type 1 error as much as possible. And then type 2 error means, okay, fine, he made crime, but because of the lapse of evidence or the records or whatever the things, so he may declare that, okay, he didn't make any crime. So it is the concept. So that is why, so type 1 error is more significant so far the error calculation is concerned. But at the same time, I should not say that type 2 error also less significant. It is also important. But usually type 1 error is considered as the most important than the type 2 error. Now, here, type 1 error, how it is related to this alpha or the level of significance, that needs more explanation and then more discussion. Now, I can start with an example. Suppose there is a testing procedure where H0 and H1 is declared as like mu equals to A and mu is not equals to A. So, there are the two hypotheses where A is a constant right, is a value, and mu is the population mean. So here hypothesis is that mean is equals to A, right? And initially it is assumed as true. And the alternate hypothesis is that the mean is not equals to A. Now here, one thing, mu equals to A, to prove it, whether you should allow some deviation from the value of A or not. That means whether mu equals to A is a single point declaration or it is actually with an interval declaration. What I want to say suppose mean score that you want to consider in your examination is that it is 50 out of 100. Now, so 50 is fine, but should we consider 50.1 also countable towards the mu equals to 1, or 49.9 should be considered, or maybe 50.5 and 49.5 should be considered. So although 50, but near about 50, there are some neighboring values also very close to this value, then we can take it. Actually, if we do so, then it essentially reduces your error. So that is why a little bit level of significance says that let this null hypothesis A0 be true within the range A plus minus delta. A plus delta and A minus delta, where delta is very small values, of course, it should be 0, okay, in ideal case, but in real case, it should be a non-zero value. Okay, that means they are significantly different from A. So delta value will decide how the null hypothesis will be significantly different from the other values of the mean value prediction. So A plus minus delta. Now here, if we plot the graph here, you possibly to understand. So here actually it is actually mean variations, right? Mean variation. And so if we say delta somewhere here like, so depends on, so let it be delta. So A minus delta, okay. So it is actually your A value, and it is actually A minus delta value. And similarly here, so it is, similarly here it is delta value. So it is actually, we say A plus delta. Now here we can understand that this is the boundary that we are fixing so that the value of A, which will be considered as the predicted value so far the null hypothesis is concerned. Okay, and this is the interval, right? This is the interval of the value of A towards the prediction value. And here, these sides, right? And you can understand that, okay, if any sample gives some value within this region, then they will be considered as a rejected one. And this will be considered as a accepted one. So here, this way, the level of significance come into the picture. Now, this can be more clearly can be expressed in terms of probability. Here, the probability here alpha says it is like this, that here X bar is actually your sample's mean or sample statistics value. So it is less than A minus delta here. So this is the probability that the X bar, that means the sample mean that you have collected, is less than A minus delta, plus the sample mean is greater than A plus delta. So it is, this is this. When mu is equals to A, that is actually your mu prediction. And here you can see this is actually H0, H2, right? Okay, so this way, the shaded region which we have mentioned here is the probability of making type 1 error. That is why I said that this is alpha. So as I said already, what is the total area under this curve? The total area under this curve is equals to 1. And this value is, right, something less than 1. And then this value plus this value and this value altogether makes equals to 1. And if we consider it a strictly normal distribution, they are symmetric, then this region and this region are equal, right? Because it is equidistant from this A minus delta and A plus delta. So if it is suppose 95, okay, it is a 5% in this area region, then this is actually 95% of the area. And out of this 5% of the error probability, if this alpha is equals to 5%, then this is actually 2.5% and this is equals to 2.5%. So it is a 0.025 is the area of this region, 0.025 is the area of this region, and 0.95 is the area of this region, shaded white region. So this is the concept of alpha that come into the picture, that if your sample, right, lying within this region and whatever the sample value said, and that is actually your right prediction. And if your sample value lying in this region, whether this region or this region, then you can say that the sample prediction, right, sample value says that your prediction should be right towards the rejecting the hypothesis that A0 is not equals to A. Now here, this is the concept that comes into the picture. Now we have therefore understood about a boundary. This boundary can clearly explain, so far your sampling distribution curve is concerned, two regions. One is the acceptable region, another is the rejection region. Now rejection region, right, are the two sides depending on what hypothesis you are considering. I'll discuss these things in details, right? And then, so they are actually the probability. Okay, so they are probability and then their value, that means the region will have its value less than 1. It is like that. Now let's come to the concept of this, the significance of the different values of alpha. If I say alpha equals to 0%, if I say alpha equals to 0%, that means this rejection region is 0. So this is 0. That means if you go there and there, then what is the concept? The concept is that the entire right region under this is a acceptable region. Now here the thing is that whatever be the sample that you collect, and then based on the sample data, you predict that your hypothesis is true. So this is one example of ultra-liberal test. So alpha equals to 0% means accepts always the null hypothesis as true. In contrast, other extreme, if alpha equals to 100. So if alpha equals to 100, then the entire region are the rejection region. Then whatever be the sample that you can collect, and from the sample data, you have to reject the null hypothesis. So this is another extreme example, and it is an example of ultra-conservative test. Definitely these two values of alpha is not a realistic value. You should not select it. Now let's see what is the realistic value for the alpha likely to be. I say one example, say alpha equals to 1% here, and another maybe alpha equals to 5%. So two are the realistic value, but how they are comparable? So alpha equals to 1% signifies that it is a lesser probability to reject a H0, and alpha equals to 5% is comparatively with higher probability to reject a null hypothesis. So it is the concept it is, and there is a reasonable justification, and usually the standard practice in many hypothesis testing to take the value of alpha is in between 1% and 5%, and usually it is 5%. So if I don't say anything, it is taken that alpha is equals to 5%. That is a standard values for the alpha or level of significance. Now here you should understand, I think you have, okay, I think you will agree with this, with that. Alpha is the maximum acceptable probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. So if alpha is 5%, that means 0.05 is the maximum probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. The hypothesis is true, but we are rejecting it. You can understand that. So type 1 error probability is therefore less, and it is alpha. And beta, if I ask you what is the probable value for beta if alpha equals to 5%? Yes, if you say 95%, then it is very difficult to write second it. But I should say that if alpha is very less value, at the same time, beta is actually very high value. As I said that, okay, alpha and beta are reciprocating to each other. If one is large, then another is small, and vice versa it is there. But alpha usually is very small value. So there beta is also very larger value. And larger value means it is, if it is not exactly 95% for alpha equals 5%, but very close to 90% or so. I'll give you the calculation of this alpha and beta value at the end of this discussion, not today, tomorrow. So you'll be able to understand the clear picture of alpha and beta concepts so far hypothesis testing is concerned. But now I am in a mood to teach you the concept of different steps. Now, so far I have completed one step, that is the step 1. Step 1 is deciding the two hypotheses, null and alternate hypothesis, and bit idea about the significance level at the alpha. Now here again, few things that you should include in your discussion so far the different hypothesis composition is concerned. You can recall the null hypothesis is always with equal sign, but the alternate hypothesis can be with less than sign, or is greater than sign, or not equal sign. If null hypothesis is with either less than or greater than symbol, if the alternate hypothesis is either with less than or greater than symbol, then such a hypothesis testing is called one-tailed test. On the other hand, if alternate hypothesis is not equals to sign, then this is called two-tailed test. So this is an example of a two-tailed test. And if the alternate hypothesis takes this form, then this is called one-tailed test. Now for two-tailed test and one-tailed test, the alpha value will be different actually. Okay, so here, if it is a two-tailed test, that means it can be greater than as well as less than. If both are applicable, this implies that rejection region will be at the both side of these things that we have already discussed. So in the initial discussion that I made just now, they are related to the two-tailed test actually. So in case of two-tailed test, there are two rejection regions at the left tail and then right tail. Right tail means if the sample value is greater than some values, and then less than left side means left tail means it is less than this one. So it is like this. So if it is not equals, then the sample can give you both less than or greater than, and in that case, two rejection regions are there. But in that case, if alpha value, right, will be divided equally among the two rejection, if alpha equals to 5%, for example, so 2.5% is at the right side of the rejection region and 2.5% is at the left side of the rejection. And at the middle, it is the accepted region, it is 95% of the total area. So this is the two-tailed test. Now, in case of one-tailed test, again, if it is less than, so for example, it is less than, then it is called the left-tailed test. And it is actually an example is a greater than, so it is called the right-tailed test. So in case of left-tailed test, the rejection region is at the one end only. And if it is a 5% is the alpha value, then this region, area of this region is 0.5. Similarly, if it is 5% but right tail test, then area of this region is there. And you can see the entire sites in this region are in the acceptance region. Similarly, in this case also, entire region at this end is the acceptance region. So it is actually example of greater than, right, the values, and it is an example of less than value. So two tail tests are there. So one tail test this is, and then two tail test is there. So you have to little bit careful about whether if it is a two tail test, so then your rejection region is equally right at the both end. So alpha value should be distributed in both sides, as alpha by 2 is one side and alpha by 2 is another side. And on the other hand, if it is one tail test, so only alpha value is one side, and depending on less than or greater than, it will be either the left side or is at the right side. Okay, so this is the rejection region. Now here again few more questions that is there. So how to choose this rejection boundary? Because I said that here this boundary, right? So here is the boundary, right? How I can decide this boundary or this boundary, right? Or even in the two tail test, this boundary, right? This is the one boundary, this is the one boundary. So who will decide this boundary, or how to decide this boundary? Yes, you are right that, okay, if given the alpha, I shall be able to choose the value of this boundary region. That means what is this point value actually, and what is this point value for a right one tail test, or for two tail test, what is the point value this one, because that is actually a minus delta and a plus delta like, right? So if you have given this is actually a, and then if this alpha is given, then possibly you will be able to calculate a minus delta and a plus delta. So that is obviously, that's fine, but there is some standard method. And as you say, as I already told you, this is a probabilistic value. So we can solve this problem better using the probability calculation. So here is an example that the rejection boundary, we can choose it very correctly. There are two ways, of course. The first way that I'm going to discuss right now, it is when alpha is given to you. That means it's a 5% or 1%, whatever the value it is given there, then there is a procedure to find it. And then next is, so given the rejection boundary, how the alpha can be calculated. So the two things are complement each other. So let us first consider, you have given the value of alpha, then how to decide the boundaries of the rejection region. So here we can start with the definition of alpha is a type 1 error. That means H0 is rejected, but H0 is true. So in terms of probability, Z falls in the rejection region when H0 is true. Here Z actually the sample statistics. Now this is actually what is the probability that Z is less than Z0 when H0 equals to mu. It is actually the left tailed, or if it is right tail, Z is greater than Z0 when H0 is equal. So this is the two cases for the one tailed, are less than or greater than. And it is actually the probability calculation for the two tail test. So Z greater than Z0 this when H equals to mu, plus P Z less than Z0 when H0 equals to mu. This is for the two tail test. Now here Z0 or Z0 dash, they are actually deciding the rejection boundary. And it is our task that how these two values Z0 dash or Z0, right, can be calculated given that alpha is given. I can start with an example so that you can understand. So this is an example, let us consider. So here mean is given to you 8.0, and standard deviation, because these two things are required so far, you can understand that, okay, what should be the shape of the your sampling distribution, and then right, and then size of the sample is 16. So this is the right input to your problem is given, and here we have to decide the rejection boundaries. They are also sometimes called critical values for the rejection region. Critical value for rejection region, and this is the alpha value that is given to you. So here alpha equals to 0.05. Now here critical values, let's see, C1 and C2 are the two tail test. Okay, and if it, okay, the same, okay, so let us consider that it is first two tail test, so the two rejection boundaries, and let they are C1 and C2. So we can say alpha equals to this one and plus this one, and in terms of this C1 and C2 we can write, so it is actually Z0 dash. So if this is actually C1, right, then you know the Z transformation if we can apply, so x bar minus mu divided by sigma root over n. and it is actually, if it is right-tailed, then we can say this is the probability that if given this C1, the Z will be greater than this one. And here, this is the left tail, C2 minus 8.0, 0.2 by 16. So these are two Z values. And in terms of this probability calculation, we can write it. So this is the standard thing that is there so far the sampling distribution is concerned. It is there. This way we can calculate probability given a sampling distribution like this one. Now, because of the symmetry of the normal distribution, these two terms, this and this plus, contributes in equal amount. So we can say, so this is equals to this is, and altogether this is equals to 0.05. So we can say this plus this equals to 0.05. That means this is equals to 0.025 as well as this is equals to 0.25. Now, here, this is the concept that we can see how we can calculate, given these kind of things, the value of C2. This calculation usually we can do if we take into confidence about the Z distribution table. Now, so there are, okay, in the Z distribution, there are two types of Z distribution. One is called, this is actually example of right tail Z distribution table and left tail Z distribution table. The table will say Z greater than some values. What is the probability it will calculate? On the other hand, if its probability is given, then if Z is less than this or Z is greater than, for what value of it is there. Now I can show you one table so that we can understand in this context. So what is the value of Z so that the probability will be, right, will be equals to 0.025. I can show you one table so that you can understand the concept it is there. So I'm showing one table here. Okay. Now here I'm showing one table and it is a Z distribution table. And from this table, you know, so this is actually left tail table, right? So left tail table means it says that what is the probability of Z less than Z0, right? And here, so 0.025, that means actually it is actually less than Z0. So we take the values of this 1 minus whatever the value it is given there. So for example, here 0.0025, right? 0.025. Now let's see, 0.025 is corresponding to 0.9750. So where is the entry 0.9750 in this table that we can find it? So here I can see here 0.9750 is this entry is there, right? Here this entry is there, 0.9750. Now this actually says that for some Z greater than Z0, this value is 0.9750, or it is less than, then 0.0250, and this value is 1.9, and here is a 0.06. So 1.96, right? 1.9 this table and then 0.06, so total 1.96. So we can say that 0.025 is this PZ0 table, these sides is corresponding to corresponding to 1.96 is the probability. That means this is the area of this region for which probability that Z is less than Z0 is equals to, okay, so it is Z0 is 1.96. So probability that Z is less than 1.96 is area is 1.95, 1.96. Now, so this table you have to little bit follow it so that you can understand about it. So what again, let's coming back to this discussion here. So this actually Z0. So this probability is equals to 0.025. Corresponding to this value is 1.96. Okay, so this corresponding to this value is 1.96, which we take from the table. So here we can say therefore this is equals to 1.96 and this is equals to 1.96 again. So if we solve it, the two values, then we can get it. C1 is 8.098 and C2 is 7.02. Now here again you see this is the positive sign because it is in the right side, and this is the negative side because in the Z distribution mu is at 0. So this value in the minus negative side, so it is negative value is taken there. You can see the statistical table from different sources. They have the different format, but you have to little bit adapt to a particular format which it gives it. But it will tell you that is a probability. It will tell always the entries in the Z distribution table is the probability value, and this probability value for some Z values. So whether Z greater than Z0 value or it is Z less than Z0 value, and this Z value can be varying from here in this table, as I said, for example, in this table again, right? As I shown there in this table, as you see, so here the table values, that means Z value varies from 0 to 3.6. Actually, essentially, it varies from minus 3.6 to 0 actually, because one you can take the 1 minus this value, it will take you these sides according to this one. But there are many other distribution table which gives only the shaded region this point. That means entries are in these values are there. So in that case, you don't have to make 1 minus direction there. Okay, so it depends on. So you just little bit have an idea about how to consult the table so that you can get the value from there, because you have to deal with the table consultation whenever some problem is given. So practice is required. I'll show you many other instances how to consult the statistical table. Anyway, so with reference to this problem, as you see, the C1, that is the right boundary, and C2, the left boundary, we could calculate. The right boundary is 8.098 and left boundary is calculated as 7.902. So it is like this. Okay, so this way we can calculate. This is the rejection boundary. That means your rejection region start from 8.098 towards the right and this one. Now this is exactly example of two-tail test. Now if it is the right tail test, then this, if it is say greater than, right values, then this is equals to 0.050. Then you have to take the table and where the NT 0.50 for which you can get this value. So equating this value to that, so that C1, the right boundary can be calculated, or if it is a left tail test, then left boundary can be calculated. So the procedure is same. You can repeat the same procedure, but only for the left tail test, on tail test, either left tail or right tail. Also you can check, and then accordingly you will be able to calculate. So this is a simple algebra. Okay, so this way I explained that given a value of alpha, how you can calculate rejection boundary, because in your statistical testing procedure, you first know the rejection region boundary, because this is the step one, right? The step one is that null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, given a significance levels, decide the rejection boundary. So this is the step there. As an alternative two, that how you can decide the value of alpha if the rejection boundary is given to you. Now this is an example that you can think about it. Say the two rejection boundary that is given to you, one is x bar less than 7.9 and another is 8.1. So it is like this. So this is the rejection boundary given to you. One is at 7.9, another is 8.1. Now you have to calculate what is the value of alpha. Let it be two-tail test again. So if it is a two-tail test and mu is 8.0, mu is 8.0 here, and sigma is 0.02, sample size is 16 for this problem, then we can write the alpha in terms of this probability definition, that z greater than this one plus z less than this one. So this actually, this after simplification, it gives 2.0 and minus 2.0. So here, this actually is a Z0, that is a Z0 value, right? And this Z0 value with certain probability, as I said, so it is a 2.0. Again, you consult the table. If P Z greater than 2.0, that means 2.0, and you see the 0.0 NT, which is there. So you can see that it is 0.228. And similarly, this is also equal amount because the area is always a positive quantity, so it is there. And altogether, you can say that it is 0.0456. This means that the area bounded by this region is 0.228 and area bounded by this region is 0.228, and this is actually the total okay, sum of the two regions, area regions, is comprises to the values of alpha. So alpha is equals to 0.0456, which is approximately 0.05 or 5%, you can say. Now again, if I ask you to repeat for the one tail test, the same thing. In that case, this will come to you directly upon 0.456. It is there. So only one side, but the area is 0.0456. Either these sides or these sides, depending on less than, greater than. Right. So this is the two examples that I say, and you can follow that. Given the alpha, how rejection boundary can be chosen, and given the rejection boundary, how the value of alpha can be chosen. So a little bit probability calculation and consulting the Z table. These things are there. I advise you to follow it. You can take the slides and then follow the table and check yourself so that you can understand the concept very clearly. This is very important because in question, in your test, a problem will be given. You have to solve the problem, and to solve the problem, you have to consult the table. So if you are not familiar with the table consultation, then you may feel it difficult to answer the problem. So that is very important. Now, so we have discussed about first step. First step is the decide null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis. Given the level of significance, what is the rejection boundary? This is the step one. Now, second step, that is the sampling statistics for testing. I told you that you have to collect a sample data, and from the sample data, you calculate the statistics value. That means what is the mean, what is the variance, standard deviation, etc. So this is a quite simple process. And further, another thing is that which sample distribution that you should follow in your hypothesis testing, that is also important. Now, in this regard, there are mainly three distribution tables are used. One is Z distribution, T distribution, and chi-square. And all these distribution, sampling distribution, you can recall from my discussion also, are valid provided that population follows the normal distribution. So assumption of normality is must to hold good to apply this one. Now again, whether Z distribution, so assume that your population follow normal distribution. So your population is normally distributed. From where you have collected your sample. Now, next is which distribution you should consider, because in statistical books, there are three distributions, Z, T, and chi-square. So you have to consider that which distribution is there. While I was discussing these three distributions, right, sampling distribution, that time I also gave an idea about it, but I'm repeating again. So Z test is applicable, right, if your population follow normal distribution, and you have to compare sample mean to population mean. That means from sample mean, you have to predict population mean. And one condition is that population variance is known. So here you can see this is the formula to calculate Z value from a given sample statistics. So X bar is from your sample mean, mu is to compare with your population mean, sigma it is known. If it is known, sample size is anyway it is known to you. So if it is known, so these are known, and you have to compare this sample mean with population mean. To do these things, it will give a Z value, and take this Z value into your calculation, and then based on this Z value, you just consider the distribution table that okay, whether this Z value lying within this region, I mean acceptance region, if this Z value lying within this acceptance region, then H0 is acceptable, and if it does not, then it is rejectable. So this is the concept again. Now, so Z test is applicable when the population follow normal distribution, and we have to compare population mean with the sample mean, and population variance is known. On the other hand, T test, it is applicable. Again, the population follows normal distribution, And usually t-test is applicable even the small sample size is given to you. And then another important is that population variance is not known. Now here is the formula. As you see, it is similar to the Z distribution formula. Only the difference you can note that it is S. This S actually the sample statistic. That means sample standard deviation. Now having these are the all values. So t value can be calculated. Now this t value needs to be consulted whether this t value is within the critical region or not. If the t value is inside the critical region, that means rejection region, then the hypothesis, null hypothesis should be rejected. And if it is within the acceptance region, then it has to be accepted. So this t value needs to be calculated from the given sample, provided that population variance is not known. As the population variance is not known, we use the sample variance in our formula. Okay, and this way we can get the t value. So it is a matter of z value or matter of t value. Z value, then we have to z test. T value, then it is t test. If it is a z value, then consult z distribution table. If t value, then you can consult t distribution table. So this is the t test. Now here all these tests, more fondly it is called parametric test because these are the parameters. X bar, mu, S, sigma, they are parameters. That is why testing based on all these parameters, and that is why hypothesis testing is also alternatively called parametric test. So whether Z test, T test, chi-square test, all are parametric test actually. And this is the example of T test, and you can understand that when you have to apply T test. It is simple that population variance is known. If it is known, Z test. If it is not known, T test. That's all. That is very simple. And now next chi-square test. Chi-square test is not to compare population mean, sample mean. It is only to compare the population variance. So from the sample data, you have to predict about population variance. If it is there, then you can follow this chi-square test. And again, it is also not the population from where you collect samples should follow the normal distribution, that is obvious, and it is there. Now here in this formula again you see how this chi-square value can be calculated. N is the size of the sample, and actually n minus 1 is called the degree of freedom of the sample. So it is n minus 1 degree. And S, you know, this S is the sample standard deviation, S square is variance, and sigma square is population variance. So if these values are known and you have to compare these values, then you have to take the confidence of chi-square. So whether sigma square is acceptable, right? It will be decided by the chi-square. Again, there is a critical region, that means rejection region and acceptance region. If this chi-square value is inside the rejection region, then whatever the population variance you assume, it is to be rejected. And if it is in acceptance region, so that means chi-square value is less than the critical value of the rejection region, then you have to accept it. That means the assumed variance is comparable to the population variance. So this is the concept. So again, I repeat, Z test you apply when population variance is known. T test you apply when population variance is not known. And chi-square test is applicable for the variance, right, prediction. That means testing, right? On the other hand, Z test and T test for population mean prediction. Predicting population mean or inferring population mean from the sample mean. Z test and T test, and chi-square inferring samples, inferring population variance from the sample variance. That's also, it is again clear which test distribution you have to apply. Then it is also clear. And then, okay, I'll show you how to consult T test and chi-square test in the same way the Z test that we have used it. Okay, whenever I'll discuss the case study, that time I'll discuss it here. Now, how to find the T value, Z value, and chi-square value? There is again, obviously, if you want to follow, usually if you write a program in Python or MATLAB and everything, so there is a library which will calculate all these values automatically, either consulting a table of database or it is from there. And there is okay manually if you want to do it for solving problems in exams, right, examinations or like that, then we usually consult statistical table. I'm keep postponing it right now because whenever I will take the example, that time I will show you how to consult the table. And the tables I have already shared with you in the SharePoint so that you can get it from there. Otherwise, from the net also you can download the tables. I have downloaded from the net itself. And from the end of the book, any book, right? If you have the ebook or something like say Walpole or whatever it is there, at the end of the book, you always find the several probability distribution table as well as sampling distribution table. So that is available there. And now here, let us first discuss one by one different case studies related to the different tests. So let us first start with a t-test. I'll tell you one example and I'll tell you how to solve this example. So 5 steps I have already told you. So we have to just, okay, in order to perform a hypothesis testing for a particular case that is given to you, you have to actually follow the 5 steps one by one. So let us first the case 1, which actually how it sets in. So suppose a coffee vendor like say Siru Coffee or something like nearby Nalanda Academic Complex has been having average sales of 500 coffee per day, 500 cups per day. So it is actually the normal what is called the record, sales record. It says that the vendors sell around 500 copies per day on the average. Now, because of the development of another academic wings in the complex, it expects to increase its sale during the, okay, so it is actually, this is the hypothesis. Hypothesis is that possibly I'm going to increase my sale. So vendor can assume it. Whether vendor decision is correct, because based on this decision, whether he will consider another boy in his shop or he will reduce the number of supporting people in his vendor. All those things is actually for the decision making, but he wants to know whether his sale has increased or decreased or remained same. It is like this, okay? And we want to convert this into a hypothesis testing formula. Now, during the first 12 days, so the sample is collected for the 12 days sale. It is okay, consider that okay randomly or first 12 days, whatever it is there. And then the different sales that is obtained, which is mentioned here. In the first day, 550, second day, 570, and then 12th day, it is 526, and so on. So this is the sample data that has been collected and given to you. And based on the sample data, you have to test the hypothesis that whether the coffee vendor has increased the sale or not. And consider 5% as the significance level of testing. Here alpha is equals to 5%. Now I hope this problem is clear. You have given a sample of size 12 and this is the sample data. So here we have to predict the hypothesis that mu equals to 500 because it's the average sale usually he is having, or mu is greater than 500 because he could increase his sale. Okay, so based on this problem, our first step is to decide the null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. These are the 5 steps. We will follow one by one. So the null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis, I told you, null hypothesis you should consider with equal sign, and mu, that is the population mean, that means his average coffee sale is 500 cups per day. And then alternate hypothesis is that if he could increase his sale, so mu is greater than 500. And given the value of alpha 0.05. Now, if you have given the values of alpha equals to 0.05, I have already told you how to find the rejection boundary, and it is a one-tail test. We can find it usually from the t-distribution table easily. Now let's come to the picture here. So here the sample-based test statistics and the rejection region for specified 0 that we have to calculate it. Now from the sample data, we can calculate t value. To calculate t value, we should know x bar. So X bar can be calculated from this data, calculating the mean of this data. So X bar can be calculated easily. Mean is actually the comparable mean, that is 500. S. Now in this case, you can tell which statistics I should follow. I am telling the t-test. Why I am telling t-test? Because in this problem statement, it didn't say anything about population variance, whether it is known or not. So from the problem statement, we don't have any idea about the population variance. Therefore, z-test cannot be applied here. And as you have to compare the mean, so the remaining test that is available to us, the remaining option is the t-test. So it is actually the t-test. So the t-value can be obtained. X bar value that can be obtained from the sample data. S value also can be obtained from the sample data. So S value can be obtained. N is actually your sample size. That's already told that it is n equals to 12. Mu is assumed mean, that is the hypothesized mean, the 500. So here is the formula how X bar can be calculated from the data. X bar is calculated as 548, and then that variance S also can be calculated. For the variance calculation, we need xi minus x bar whole square for all xi. So this is a contingency table for each xi, the 12 data. Xi minus x bar is calculated. X bar is calculated previously, and this is the square is calculated, and this is the summing, and this will be the sum. And this sum divided by n minus 1, it will give you the variance S. So is the standard deviation actually S, and that is valued as 46.68. Now having this X bar and S, and mu is 500, n is 12, we shall be able to calculate t value. So this t value is calculated, this one. Now this is actually t value that we have calculated given the sample data. So here t value is 3.58 as it is shown here. Now we have to check that whether this t value lying in the rejection region or it is in the acceptance region. Now our next step, our step 3, is to decide the rejection region. Now this rejection region, that means this is the critical value, right? The boundary can be obtained given their alpha value. So alpha value it is given to you. You can calculate using the formula that I have told you, but here the t distribution table needs to be consulted. So here the t table, actually the entry of the t table, if you see, it needs the information about what is the degree of freedom. As I said, for this 12 data, degree of freedom is 11. So this is the degree of freedom for the data 11. So in order to consult the t table, we need two input. One is the degree of freedom and what is the level of confidence. And there are again two tail and one tail tests. So depending on two tail 5%, one tail 5%, the different t tables are there. So accordingly, we have to follow it. And from this table, for 11 degrees of freedom with 5%, we can check that the t value is 1.796. Now let us consider the t table consultation, so that we can understand the t table here. I am showing the t table. So this is a normal distribution table, and here is the t table. Okay, should I increase the size of the screen so that you can see it very clearly, right? Here. Okay, I think this is clearly visible, right? Now here you can see it. Okay, sorry. Okay, now 11 is the degree of freedom. Here you see the rows includes the different degrees of freedom. So 11 degrees of freedom, and for this problem one tail test, so 5%. So it is this column. So this rows and this column, and we can see 1.796 is the value of the entry. That means this is actually the critical boundary for this test, t-test, that means 1.796. Now here, following this 1.796, as you see here I also show you, this is the critical value, that means these are boundary values for the rejection region is 1.796. Now, so here now we are in the process of making a decision whether the hypothesis, null hypothesis, to be rejected or accepted. As you see, the critical boundary is 1.796, and your test value, that is obtained based on the sample. So this is the sample, right, value, and it is obtained as 3.55. And as this value is in the rejection region, this means that based on the sample data, we have to reject the hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is rejected in this case, and this rejection with probability of error. The probability of error is 0.05. So we reject the null hypothesis with 0.05 or 5% is the error, right? That H0 is true. Okay, so this is the test case 1. I hope you have understood it.
Sir, 1 second.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure.
So can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure. Yeah.
So 3.558 value came from where?
3.55 value came from
sorry.
sample data collection. I can tell you here. This is the sample data I have collected.
Okay.
Okay. And then I calculated the mean and then standard deviation and then t-value I have calculated using this formula. That is actually, okay, this t-value I have calculated using this formula, right? So from the sample data, I calculate x bar. So x bar is calculated from the sample data. S is also calculated from the sample data. Mean is hypothesized mean. I have to compare this mean with the population. N is the sample data size. Okay. This is 48, 46.6812, which is the value. And then 3.558 is calculated. So from the sample data, right? It's okay?
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Okay, good. And this t-value I calculate from the statistical t-distribution table. T-distribution table needs what is the degree of freedom and what is the alpha value. So given two value, you will be able to find t-values. Again, t-value, whenever you consult t-distribution table, be careful whether it is a two-tail test or one-tail test. Now, this is an example of a one-tail test. So I have consulted t-distribution table for one tail. That's okay. So this way I could test this hypothesis. So now you can see in a common man language, what is the interpretation of the test is that sample data says, or our hypothesis testing says that coffee sale have increased. That means vendor can take this decision into his action, whatever it is there. Okay, so this is the test procedure here, and I hope you are able to follow it. Now, there are many catches. So one thing is that you can, okay, you didn't argue me, and that time I didn't, okay, point it out also. So you can see null hypothesis is fine for me, mu equals to 500. But so far the alternative hypothesis is concerned that we have considered mu greater than 500. You could argue that why it is mu greater than 500, why not mu less than 500? Now, if I say so, mu less than 500, do you think that the result will be different or the result will be different? Further, another possibility that I could consider mu not equals to 500, right? Now, so there are two different other options are there. Definitely, if you consider mu not equals to 500, it should come under the two-tail test, and then t-value will be a little bit different. It will be higher for the two-tail test, and then definitely the result, the outcome of the result may be different. Now here my question is that which is the right choice so far this hypothesis decision is concerned here. I have considered mu equals to 500, mu is greater than 500. But if, do you think that, okay, I will make, okay, wrong analysis if I say mu less than 500? Or do you say that I will make wrong analysis if I take mu not equals to 500? Now here, I'm telling you, so this answer lies in the problem statement here. So this problem statement, actually, they are interested to know about whether coffee sale has increased or not. So as it is the concern of increasing, so we have to test this hypothesis actually. So whether it is increased or not. So if it is the hypothesis that to test whether a sale is increased or not, so I should say that mu greater than 500. right? If it is asked that whether my cell remains same, then I could say that, okay, it is not equals to 500 or change whatever it is there. So mu equals to 500, it is a de facto standard that we always take it. That means we assume that there is no increase in the cell, so mu equals to 500. And next hypothesis is that cell has increased, so that is why mu greater than 500. So far this problem statement is concerned, it is quite justified to take this value, not mu less than 500. However, if you take mu less than 500, all the steps in calculation will remain same. Therefore, your interpretation and then inference also will remain same. It will not change. But if it is not equals to 500, then your result will be different, inference will be different. Only that's one. Otherwise, it is nothing. Next point that you can think about, that you have given that alpha is 5%. But what will be the result if we consider alpha equals to 0.01? Now this answer can be given again because alpha is 1%. So alpha equals to 1%. So we can consult this T distribution table for the same degrees of freedom 11, but with one tail test, and it is the 1% confidence level. That means 1.796, so it will be 2.718. So this is the critical boundary will shift from 1.796 to 2.215. But even though, so there also, I think your inference will not change because your inference also will not change because that is also, okay, whether it is the t value that you have calculated based on the sample data is 3.558, and then the new t value that is 2.2196. So this is still in the rejection region. Anyway, so this is the example here. But again, if I say if it is not 5%, if it is say 10% confidence, means I just, okay, making more errors, but I want to test it. That means with 10%. Again, if you consult the test table, and then your outcome may be different, right? And your outcome will be different. Or if you decrease the rejection region further below 1%, so maybe 0.1%, then also your right boundary can shift, and then, okay, which is acceptable, because if you reduce the values of alpha, your rejection region will be reduced. And as a consequence, for the higher values of alpha, which is acceptable, for a lower value of alpha, the same sample data can be appear as rejectable. So it depends on. Now, again, this is an issue. So which alpha value should be considered? Whether it is specified or is a standard practice, or you have to choose it. Now, this answer I will give you after completion of all the case studies. So let us first visit all the case studies, and then I will come to the discussion of the possibilities of alpha values or the choosing right alpha values. So this is another discussion. The separate discussion is required, and then I'll make this discussion later on. So let's start about second case study.
Sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, can you go back to the previous slide?
This slide?
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, even if we put H1 as nu is less than 500, the answer will not, like, it will still be in a rejection part rather than in the acceptance part. So
yes,
we will come back to the same position, right?
Yes. Here actually see, that is correct. What will be the interpretation? What is the interpretation there?
Yeah, in that case, it will be like I'm rejecting H1. We are rejecting H1.
So we are rejecting H. We are rejecting here. Actually, we have rejected H0. Is not it?
Okay.
We have rejected H0. That means mu is not 500. Yes. This means that alternate hypothesis, if you say less than 500, then okay, it is okay that 500 is there. But whenever it is like this, so I'm telling you, you listen to me first. Mu equals to 500. This is my assumed hypothesis. And based on this testing, I reject the hypothesis with 5% probability of error. Is okay? Now, so we are rejecting this hypothesis, implying that coffee cell does not remain same, because mu equals to 500 remains same. So I can say that it does not remain same, right? This is fine, right? Now it does not remain same implies again two things, whether it is increased or whether it is decreased. Now what is your conclusion, whether it is increased or decreased? What is your conclusion?
Right now, the conclusion is we are.
Yeah. So conclusion is ambiguous.
Yes.
It can be anything, because you are not able to confidently give the answer whether increased or decreased. So it's a 50% chance that it's increased, 50% chance is decreased. Are you clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm understanding.
Yeah. Now, so then how to live with this decision? Because this is an ambiguous decision. We should not work with ambiguity. We should not live with ambiguity. Then how to live with this? So here again, we have to do another test, another hypothesis test, another sample correction. Say suppose you have to take that, okay, it increased. If it increased, then I can take another mu value, say 600, and then again repeat the test and know whether I have to accept it or not. And this way I can conclude that, okay, it is increased or decreased. I hope you have understood.
Yeah.
So hypothesis testing is not the one-time job. It is a repeated testing procedure with trial, and then check that, okay, which can be more conclusive based on majority of voting. And then only you can confirm that cell has increased. And then if it is not decreased, whatever it is there. Okay, and now I am discussing one method. There is another method also I will discuss, that is called the confidence interval method. That will give you more, okay, concrete result. That is actually to live with this ambiguity. There is an alternative method I will discuss. Anyway, what I can say, I repeat it again so that you should not lose your confidence. The idea is that we test mu equals to 500 and alternate hypothesis that mu greater than 500. We reject this hypothesis. This rejection implies that cell either increased or decreased. Now, in order to confirm whether really cell have decreased or increased, then we have to perform another hypothesis testing with another mu values, and then, okay, to decide that whether this mu value stands right conclusive for our decision or not. And this way repeated things, and then we can come into the conclusion that, okay, the actual fact what happens. And this is the hypothesis testing procedure. I repeat that it is not the one time. We have to repeat it with different, what is called the hypothesis, and then different testing. That's all. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's proceed further. Then there are many other, right? Many other glitches and many things are there. I will point it out, whatever I can do, and then I can discuss. But I want to proceed further so that discussion can be to and fro like. So we can back again and then we can discuss it again. But I will point out whatever the things that is usually occur, and people, whenever I was learning that time also, I faced many kind of questions of my own, and then I tried to solve of my right own, and anyway, so I'll just share my experience. Now let's proceed with the second case study, because see, after discussing 3 case studies, many things will be clear automatically, that I feel. And even if it is, okay, some points are not clear, I will take special care to discuss them. Now let's come to the case study 2. Now this example, as I said, a Z test. So I have chosen 3 case studies, one corresponding to 2 tests, which just now I have discussed, another Z test, and then chi-square test. So now, right now, I'm going to discuss about the Z test. Now let us consider a problem definition first, and then the 5 different steps that needs to be followed will be discussed one by one. Now this is one example. This example is very simple. It is actually to check the accuracy of a machine, whether machine is working correctly or not, right? Now, what is this machine? You know, the medicine production, right, where medicine is produced, and it needs to be packaged into a bottle. So usually this packaging or is a bottling is done by a machine. So suppose you have to prepare a medicine of a tube of 8 milliliter content, right? And then you use a machine for this purpose. So medicinal drop will be poured into the tube, and then capacity of the tube will be 8 milliliter, and that is to be done by a automatic machine. So in order to take the control that whether machine is working properly or not, so you need to do a hypothesis testing for the purpose. So my objective is to test the machine whether it is working correctly or not. That means if it puts 8 milliliter in every tube, then I can say that machine is working perfectly. But if it does not, then mean in some bottle less than 8 milliliters, in some bottle more than 8 milliliter, then I can say that machine does not working properly. But in that case, I should consider that, okay, how much tolerance that I can allow. Okay, so 8 milliliter, whether 8.001 is tolerance or 7.999 is tolerance, or even 8.1 is tolerable or 7.9 is tolerable. That is actually my jurisdiction. Okay, so I will decide it. Now let's see, to test this hypothesis, then definitely I need some samples. So from the production line at random interval, I have collected 16 tubes, okay, after bottling, and then I consider them as a sample. And my tolerance level is measured as a variance that can be allowed 0.2. So 8.2 within it is fine, but if it is 8.3, then machine is not working correctly. Similarly, 7.8, if it is fine, but if it is 7.7 or 7.75, then it is not correct. Okay, so it is my tolerance. That is actually, this tolerance is measured by means of the calculation of variance. So 0.2 is the variance. So sigma square is equals to 0.2. Now here you can understand that this variance is given to you. So this means it is your population variance. So your population, that means your bottle, can allow to have varying from your mean level as the 0.2. And here is the mean. What is the mean value? Your mean value is 8. Now, so we can perform the test here as the, and assume that the distribution follow normal distribution. Okay, we have confirmed it, but it is given that, okay, population follow the normal distribution, and then population variance is known. So if the population follow normal distribution, population variance is known, and we have to compare population mean given from a sample mean, then it is a problem of Z test. So it is actually, this is a case under the Z test. Now let's see what are the different 5 states. First step is that we have to decide the hypothesis, null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So null hypothesis is 0, that means mu equals to 8. It is absolutely okay. And what about the alternate hypothesis? Now alternate hypothesis is that my machine is not working correctly. My machine is not working correctly. It means that sometimes machine is putting little medicine, sometimes in some bottles it is more than the required content, required volume. So it is actually mu1, H1, that means mu is not equals to 8. That is the right choice for the 2 hypotheses without any hesitation, without any doubt. I hope this is perfectly okay. So our first step is the specification of hypothesis is that H0 is mu equals to 8. The alternate hypothesis is mu is not equals to 8. And one more thing is that significance level. Okay, as is the standard practice of our hypothesis testing, let us assume without any anonymity, without any debate argument, alpha is 0.05. That means 5% is the level of significance. That means alpha is the 5% probability of error is allowed. Type 1 error is 5%. Okay, so this step 1 is fine to everybody, I hope. If anybody has any doubt, let me know so that I can take your doubts and then try to convince yourself. It's okay to everybody, right? Okay. Now our second step. The second step, as I said you, that from the data collected from the sample, we have to calculate sample statistics. So that's fine. So n is 16. This is the size of the sample. And from the sample that we have collected, right, from the 16 sample, the data I have not given here. It is just an array of data. From the sample, I collect that the sample mean is 7.89. That is, I have calculated. The detailed data is not shown here, but it is from the sample calculation. It is there. Now here sigma is 0.2. Okay, it is actually standard deviation. Assume that it is not, I told that variance, it is actually sample deviation. Okay, so standard deviation 0.2. Sigma is 0.2. No issue. And with the sample state statistics, so Z value, because we want to do the Z table, so Z value needs to be calculated. So this is the sigma that we have calculated. So this is the sigma, right? And this is the X bar, and this is the mu, that is assumed mu, the hypothesized mean, and n is the sample size. Now this gives the value 2.20. So we can take the Z actually value it is. So it is equals to 2.20. So this is the Z value that we can get it from the sample data. Now this is the Z value that we can calculate it, and we need to check whether this 2.20 Z value for this sample that we have collected is lying inside the rejection region or inside the acceptance region. That we need to test. Now this test, to do that, we have to know the rejection region boundary, and for the rejection region boundary, we can consult the Z distribution table. Now the Z distribution table, it is actually the 2.20, and so it is actually, we have to see that what is the Z value for which probability of Z by Z0 is 2.20. So this will give you the rejection region. Now from the Z table, right, we can see for alpha equals to 0.05, right, that PZ, that can be calculated from the table as 1.96. So for this 1.96, right, and then alpha 0.5. Alpha is basically the error probability. So we have to check that this alpha occurs in the Z table in which row. As I said, it is 1.96. So this is the Z value, that it is greater than 1.96, right? And again, it is a two test table. So actually it needs to be tested with 0.25, right? Because there are two rejection boundary. So it is here anyway. So 1.96 is the rejection boundary that we can get it from the table. Okay, that you can check it, right? Should I show you the Z table so that we can, how you can find 1.96 from there? I think you'll be able to do that. Okay, so from the Z table I can get it. So 1.96 is my rejection boundary. Now from the test data, what we got is that this Z value lying as a 2.20. So it is here, right? So 2.20 means it is in the rejection region. So therefore, so it is rejected. So we can reject the null hypothesis H0. So reject the null hypothesis means that simple interpretation is that machine is not working correctly. So here we need to adjust or repair the machine. So that is the conclusion. So this is the case study. And I hope again is the same as the t-test, but you can understand about it. Now here few points that we can elaborate on. So there are few comments that may come from your side also. If you can read of your slide and the slide, you can, okay, all those comments will come here, but let me point out what are the comments that can come here. Now, if we change the value of alpha instead of 0.05, whether the inference will be different or it will remain same. Now in that case, so these are the two hypotheses, same, but we have changed this value alpha. Again, if we repeat the step, and then here, this is the 2.576 that can be obtained from the test table where 0.01 is looking there. So it is that 2.2567, the new rejection boundary can be obtained And as you check that rejection boundary has changed, right? From 1.976 to 2.576 as alpha is decreases. As alpha is decreases, rejection boundary moves towards left or towards right actually, right? More. So it moves towards right then, okay, this one. And from the test data, same result we can obtain it. So it is a 2.20. And therefore, if we compare here 2.20 and 2.756, then what we can say that the rejection boundary is beyond this one. That means here the hypothesis that we can write here, actually if we see it is like this. So it is the mu equals to 8. And so this is the calculated, right? So for the Z distribution table, 2.576. And from the sample data, the Z table can obtain it is here 2.20. So this is the Z value, right? So 2.20. Now, so this says that this is inside the acceptance region. So based on this alpha value, right, the 0.01, we accept this hypothesis H0. So we accept this hypothesis H0 means now we can conclude that machine is working correctly. So this is the alpha equals to 1%, right? That's fine. So you can understand that, okay, here the error will be less. So it is better, more conservative test. When alpha is 5, it is more liberal test. Okay, so it is there. Now another case maybe, say suppose you have collected the sample. Here for your sample, this value is calculated 7.89. Now you could either increase the size of the sample or taken another sample of the same size. Let us consider the second situation. You consider another 16 bottles, but at another session, another production line, another production day, and then take it. Now that may not be same 7.89. That may be different. Let us consider another case, that's 7.91, and then let us consider alpha again, same as 0.05. So these are the two hypotheses. Alpha remains same as earlier. Variance also the same that we can say about it. Only the thing is that X bar is 7.98. Now again, if we repeat all the step, so this is the 1.96 for alpha. It is that is the boundary region, critical value of the boundary region, and here this will change. X bar 7.98, and this will give 1.80. Now for this sample, and even alpha is 0.5, because 1.80 and this is 1.96, so it is right. It is far right towards the acceptance region. So it is in the acceptance region. 1.80 is in the acceptance region. Therefore, we accept 808. Okay. So now you can understand that earlier for the same values of alpha, but for a different sample, we reject hypothesis. But when with different sample value, it is accepted the hypothesis. This means that for the same type 1 error probability, but for the different sample, it can give the different inference, the different results. That means it is sensitive to sample. But again, this sensitiveness is measured by how much probability of error you are allowing. Now, if I ask you to repeat the same problem, this problem again, X bar is 7.91, but with alpha is 0.01. You may find the different inference, different conclusion. So these are the different things. That means all the statistical testing, the hypothesis testing is sensitive to many what is called a testing values that you have considered. So it can, right? Depending on what kind of confidence that you want to have in your testing and how much sample. Now again, if you ask me, okay, sir, alpha is same, but different sample, then what should be my conclusion? So here again ambiguity. For sample 7.89, I reject it. For sample 7.91, I accept it. So what will be my final conclusion to my boss if I want to report the result? Then my suggestion is that you should not sit idle doing only 2 tests. Let us make 10 tests. Then take the majority of voting. That is the concept. Out of 10, if you see 3 is in favor of accepting null hypothesis and 7 is not in favor, then you can say more confidently rejecting the hypothesis. Otherwise, you have to do it alternatively. So these are the procedure. See, hypothesis testing is a probabilistic things. And for the probability, for example, if I ask you to toss the coin, and you know the probability that a head will come is 0.5 and probability that tail will come 0.5. Now you can do 10 tosses. And in 10 toss, you can check that head comes 4 and tail comes 6. Then what you can say to your student that what is the probability is 0.4 is for head and 0.6 this. You cannot do it. So what you can do? You can repeat the test with 50 tosses. The result will be little bit towards your more maturity, right? In that case, you can see the 0.48, maybe the head, 0.52, maybe the tail. Now repeat the test for 500 tosses. You can see the 0.499 maybe for tail and 0.5001 maybe head. Again repeat 5,000 and then you can check that result is in favor of you 0.5000 for head and 0.5000 for your tail. It is like this. So testing is like, so whenever testing with probability is in the picture, it is not that one-time job. You have to do it several times and then finally it is there. So it is if you write a program, if you have the different samples and then you can test it and then you can conclude the final thing and then you can report the result. So this is the procedure. Okay. Now, so this is the second case that I told you and with the different variations that I told you. Now here again, reporting the summary of the results. So for the case study is concerned, H0 is rejected with X bar 7.89, H0 is not rejected with X bar 7.91. In both cases, I have considered alpha is 0.04. Again, for the same sample but different alpha, H0 is rejected, H0 is not rejected. This is obvious because what kind of confidence, what kind of error probability that you want to include in your result. So latter is more conservative and then the previous one with alpha 0. It's little bit liberal, so it is there. So as the error probability changes, so that is why conclusion may change. Now again, the question is that which one the right value of alpha that should be considered, and then I can take more confidently that okay, with this error probability my result is sound. So definitely again, if you continue with the different values of alpha, alpha is 0.01, alpha 0.02, alpha 0.03, and so many tests are there, then you can say it, and then you can have little bit clear picture that up to these values of alpha, and with this sample, I can tell this, and after these values of alpha, this one. So this test is subject to certain limitation, and that is alpha value. But you know, this is also little bit time consuming, not so cost effective process. And as a result, it is better that if we think something, a better idea about it. And this is a majority of the question that, okay, this concept may have certain difficulties. Now to deal with this, there is a better concept. That concept is called the p-value concept. Now p-value concept is an alternative idea where you don't have to specify the value of alpha a priori. In the previous testing, I told that first consider the value of alpha, which is the step 1 itself, and then follow the 5 steps in the testing. But the p-value concept says that you don't have to take the values of alpha a priori. Rather, suggest the p-value based on the sample. Now let's see what is the procedure. Now p-value concept comes into the question because many data analysts do not have a fixed or definitive idea about what should be the appropriate value for alpha for the hypothesis testing. Using a specified level of significance value of alpha that we have discussed, a decision differs even for a minor change in sample statistics. Here, okay, so here as you see, for the different 7.89 and 7.9, if the minor changes in the sample value, but for the same alpha, the decision is different. So here is a problem. For a specified level of significance, decision can be different if there is a little change in the sample statistics. So that is why, as an alternative or to deal with these issues, there should be a proper method, a better method to report the result of hypothesis testing. And this method is better if we don't mention or we don't start with the prior value of level of significance. Then, okay, then how? So if I don't mention that type 1 error probability, then how confident my decision maker will be, my boss will be to take my result. So it is up to the decision maker. So decision maker can take this test with this level of significance, with this p-value concept. I will come to the discussion of p-value or not. Now let us see what exactly the concept of p-value is in hypothesis testing. It is very simple. The idea is that p-value, as the name p-value. So what is the p? P is actually probability value. That is why p-value. So p-value is the probability of committing type 1 error if the actual sample value of the statistics is used as the boundary of the rejection region. Now here is the thing that you can find the idea about it, that so here this p-value is used as the boundary of the rejection region. Now you note, earlier the boundary of the rejection region is chosen by the alpha value, but here p-value is chosen as the boundary. Now what is the p-value? P-value is the actual sample value of statistics. For example, x bar is a sample value and it is say 7.89 is the sample value, suppose. Okay, so corresponding to this 7.89, what is the Z0 that can be obtained from the Z value formula or T formula, whatever it is there, that will give you the boundary. So this boundary is decided not from the table. Here no table is required to consult, only this calculation. So it is also very easy, right? And from the sample, you can decide the boundary. And for that boundary, we can report the result that, okay, for this test, it is this. And this p-value is the smallest level of significance. Because if you take alpha value anything, this or this, whatever it is there, but it is the smallest value for which H0 is to be rejected. That means if it more than this value, then that H0 will be rejected. But it is the smallest value that, okay, it will be rejected. Otherwise, for any other p-value, right, which is larger than this Z0 will be accepted. So this is the concept of, right, p-value. Now let's see one example so that you can understand how the p-value can be calculated. So the calculation of p-value is pretty straightforward. As I said, you p actually that can be calculated from the table. If Z0 is calculated from your sample data, so it is what is the probability that it can be calculated. So this p-value is actually this one, right? So it is actually this p-value. Now, if it is a one-tail test, this is 1. If it is a two-tail test, this will be multiplied by 2. That's all. Nothing else. So the p calculation is very straightforward rather. Okay. Now let us consider an example so that you can understand this concept. Now this is one hypothesis testing where we have to test this null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is this one. So it is a two-tail test. And for a sample which obtained, and this is the sample data, n the size is the variance and x bar is the sample mean. So Z0 can be calculated from all these data here. It is like this. So 2.20. Now, so p-value that can be calculated because of two tests. So Z greater than Z0. That means here Z0 is 2.0. So we can calculate that this value is 0. So this is from the table that you can get it, 0.0139 multiplied by. So it is 2.278. It is approximately 3%. So here for this example, p-value is 3%. Then what I can say is that this sample says that you accept the hypothesis with 3% as the type of one error. Now you take another sample, then that sample if suggests around 3%, that's fine. If you take another sample, if it says 1%, then you can stick to that 1% is the type 1 error, and another sample, this is 1. So you can repeat the test with different sample, and then minimum p-value that you can get, and then based on this value you can report the result, and that is you can say, and then boss you can take that, okay, so much confidence I am having so far the error is concerned, and this is my result. So see, this is the idea of the p-value, and here we don't have to think the alpha value a priori, only the value can be calculated from the sample, and then we can report the result with this one. So this is the p-value concept. Here are many interpretations from the p-value that we can easily do it. The example which we have given just now is the probability of type 1 error is 3% with that sample that we have considered. The null hypothesis is rejected with level of significance 0.0278 or higher. That is obvious. The inference of population mu is equals to 8 is acceptable with 3% error or 97% accuracy. And as you have already mentioned, we don't require any specification so far the significance level of concern at the beforehand of the testing. Reporting results with p-value is a better information for decision makers from data analytics. So being a data analyst, if you report p-value, it is a better information to your boss regarding the decision that you got it based on your test. Okay, so this is the idea that we have, but case study 3, I don't think that I shall start it today. I'll take another class, one more class is required where I can conclude the other portion. There are few more things also to be discussed. So case study 3, few more critical comments on the hypothesis testing. Finally, I'll discuss an alternative test of hypothesis called the confidence interval method. Okay, that will be tomorrow, day after tomorrow on Thursday morning class. It's okay, fine. Now, if you have any question, please let me know. Okay, we can discuss on your question because we have little bit time, and so that we can go on taking some question. Any question?
Sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, can you go back to slide 44?
Yeah, sure. Slide 44, right? This slide?
Yeah. I think the one before that.
Okay. Two-tailed.
Yeah. The question is that why is that one-tailed goes 0.05% and two-tailed goes 0.01%, something like that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Right. No, I told you one-tailed test means what? One-tailed test means either less than or greater than. So far the comparing mean value is concerned. Is it correct?
Yes.
If it is greater than, then only your rejection region will be one side only. If it is less than, then it is also another side only. Right? So yes, they are one-tailed. That means one side, either left tail or right tail. You get it?
Yes.
Okay. But suppose if it is not less than only or not greater than only, but not equal only, right? Not equal means it can be less than as well as it can be greater than. So it is less than plus greater than. So probability that it is less than plus probability that it is greater than. So there are two. That is why I told about that two test is here. One tail test means the probability that Z0 is less than, right? It is the right tailed. And probability that Z is greater than Z0, it is a left tailed. So they are one tailed. For the two tailed, P is greater than Z0 plus P less than Z0, right? And is a two tailed. So two pluses are there. Now here, alpha is the probability. If it is a one tail, then the area bound, alpha is the probability, means I told you that is the area bounded by the curve. So that will only the, so if alpha is 5%, then the probability is 0.05. If alpha is 5%, but if it is a two-tailed, so this probability will be distributed both sides of the curve. That means both left side as well as for the right side. That is why the two areas. So it will be divided and is a symmetric, so equally divided. So this way, so here you see for alpha is 5%, but it is for the two-tailed, so both side. So alpha by 2 is in the left side, alpha by 2 in the right side. Okay, that is why alpha is equals to 0.05 and divided by 2, so it is 0.025 in both sides. I hope
Yes.
you got it.
Yes, I got it.
Yes. So these are the things that you have to be little bit careful while you are giving the answer. Two-tailed, and accordingly consult the test table and then get the result, right? That is only the thing. Okay, so few problems you need to practice. I'll give you few problems so that for your practice, or even okay, we can discuss few more problems also. Anyway, if time permits. Any other question from anybody else? Okay, then if you don't have any question, I advise you to go through the slides and then, okay, and then try to understand the concept with your own space so that you can, right, better understand.